Hey everybody, welcome to Jet Live. I'm here with Sam Gordon from New York City. He's joining us today. He actually, um, can I say he was in? Yeah,
Yeah,
he
you
was.
can say. You
He
can
was
say.
working. He was working on Good Morning America today. So occasionally he's still doing. I'm actually. So you work on the lighting board there. What lighting do they need? That like What's so what do they have that they need lighting in the room for Good Morning
Well,
America?
there's still actual live broadcast in the studio. So we have two anchors, and I think tomorrow we're actually going to get back to three anchors for Good Morning America. There's usually like, I think, don't quote me on this, you'd have to watch the show, but I think there's about six regular anchors on Good Morning America. So, during normal times, everybody's in the studio. You have probably about like 3 to 5 people in at the home base desk, as we call it, and then you have the weather person, you have your pop news person. The show actually has a live audience. It takes place on two different floors in the studio. So on a normal time, the show is incredibly busy. There's a lot of changes throughout the show because we actually do several live set changes between the two different
Mm,
studios. Um, and but right now, a lot of the anchors are broadcasting from home, but we still have people in the live studio. And for any of you that are watching ABC on a daily basis, if you are, I know probably in Israel, you guys are not watching Channel 7 New York, but there's also a show we've been taping with Amy Roback called Pandemic, and you can guess what that's about. It's about the current pandemic. So we're actually doing a live show from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then from about 9:30 to 11 a.m. ish, we're doing a pre-tape for a not live show that's broadcast later in the day.
mhm.
So we have far fewer actual cues than usual. A show like Good Morning America and most TV shows here in New York, at least where I've worked, they're run live off faders. We don't use cues like you would have like a stack in um, a theater show. So it's a actually very complicated show to run. So that's one of the reasons why, as someone who's previously worked in the studio, why I'm getting the opportunity to still substitute and step in so that other people can have a day off um, during this little bit crazy time. We just have like 5 cues the entire day versus like a lot more.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's it
but
in a nutshell. And in terms of technical lights in a show like Good Morning America, there's a lot of lights in the studio of many different varieties. We have lights that are static, lights that wash, that will just kind of like fill up the whole room to like, light an audience. But then we have a lot of lights that are like specific spotlights to light people at like every chair at the home base desk has lights focused to every chair, like actual static lighting units. And then the reason you can actually see anything on TV is because of lighting. So the reason you can see a wall or you can see a desk or you can see the floor is because there's literally a light on every single object. So like if I turned all the lights on in a studio and you had a camera pointed at it, it would look normal like it does on TV. And if I turned off certain lights, like if I turned off the scenery lights, you would notice like everything would look terrible. So ironically, lighting, even though lighting from the viewer's point in a TV news show looks really boring. When you watch TV news, you're like, oh, it's just a bunch of talking heads on like a desk because that's what every single TV news station ever. But actually, there's a lot of effort that goes into setting up a show, and we probably have about, I don't know, probably at least 100 moving lights in the whole studio between both floors. We probably have about 30 downstairs in the smaller studio, and I'd say we have probably maybe 50 upstairs. And then we have a lot of lights that are LED or color changing. We,
so
we kind of grandfather a lot of stuff in, so we have a lot of old and new technology in that studio specifically. It's kind of hysterical.
wow. So you're working.
What'd you say?
I missed. What did you say? I missed that last part.
Oh, we kind of have band-aids on band-aids because there's a lot of older and newer technology, like from static lights or just flooding lights to like newer LED color changing floodlights or lights that move and change color and shape and size and pattern.
Wow, wow.
Uh, yeah.
I So by the way, just Alee Kaplan Wildman is watching. He says, "Hey, girl."
Hey, I
And
need to find
Abby, I saw you
her.
watching for a second. um, so you working in TV, and you also have recently been working in the theater. You were working on which show recently? I mean, I mentioned the people on JetLab beforehand, but want to hear from you.
I was the pink contract head electrician on Beetlejuice full time from about February 4th till it shut down. I was supposed to be there through the 22nd of March, and then someone else was going to take over because that show was going to vacate the theater on June 6th. Obviously, now because of the pandemic, the show has already technically closed. But theater is, as you know, CB, it's what I have a degree in. I actually have a degree in production and design. Um, you know, from Montclair State University. So obviously theater is my passion. Musicals is definitely a huge passion. I love doing musicals compared to a play. I mean, a good drama is a good drama and a good comedy is a good comedy, but there's nothing really more exciting than a musical. But something like a Beetlejuice, it's a huge, crazy show, and I did not load it in. I kind of stepped in to substitute, and then eventually ended up temporarily taking over. And it's a beast of a thing.
Right. So that leads me to my question of you. So you do theater and TV. You've worked in both settings. What's the biggest differences with the lighting compared to like a huge Broadway show like Beetlejuice and a huge production like Good Morning America? I mean, it's
Well,
a
there's
pretty
two
big
really
TV show.
differences. Although for Beetlejuice specifically, there was some manual adjustments I would have to make on a daily basis. We had atmospheric effects. We had a low fog effect for anyone who has seen the show or saw the movie. That was, I think, lifted from the movie because it's owned by Warner Brothers. So because of temperature and humidity changing constantly indoors with the outside weather conditions, I would have to readjust certain things manually. And because of the complexity of the scenic turnovers in the middle of that show, we actually test lights in the middle of the show during another scene in between cues. So there was a lot of manual control in that for a Broadway show, but a Broadway show, the stage manager calls your light cues and you hit the go button. And in a show like Beetlejuice, there was approximately 800 total light cues and over 700 called light cues. The light board at Beetlejuice controlled any media content, so it controlled all of the projectors and the LED wall that flew in. Sometimes the lighting board controlled sound effects, and sometimes the special effects sound operator controlled my light board. So there was a lot of
Right.
instances where I would sit back and the show would literally run itself. And there's one instance where that show would run off of time code from the orchestra pit, sent through as what we call SMPTE technology, where everything just kind of runs by itself. And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. It crashed one time that I had all the times I ran the show. And it was really an interesting experience to have it crash. And for me, it was a very positive learning experience, even though it was a little scary at the time. But a Broadway show, you're supposed to have the same show pretty much every day, right? And that
Yeah.
stage manager is calling your light cues, go, 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 all the time. Something like a TV news show like Good Morning America or a Jimmy Fallon show, something like that. Those shows are different every single day. You get a different rundown every day. You have a lighting designer or a lighting director in the studio with you every day, making artistic decisions. You're updating manual control or cues. In Good Morning America, we have music segments, so that would be the only time that we use an actual cue stack, right? Mm-hmm. They would rehearse a piece at about 5:30 or 6:30 in the morning. The show goes up at 7. The music piece would go on about like 8:30. That show's 2 hours long. So it's very quick. Everything is always changing. Even today, actually, the lighting director, Sean, we had someone substitute for Amy Roback on Pandemic, and Amy Roback is a very white person, and the other girl that came in, I don't remember her name, I apologize for that. She is a very light-skinned Black girl, so obviously there's a huge
You have to change lighting for that.
Yeah, so like we had to brighten up some lights to make her look the same on camera. And like I said, in the theater show, you have a cue stack and you hit really one button most of the show. In a TV situation, at least here in New York, the style is to run everything manually off of faders, which in a theater setting I wouldn't do unless I was doing like another live event, like a 1-day concert or maybe a fashion show. I've done a bunch of fashion shows, but fashion shows we actually typically write cues. And if you have 5 fashion shows in one day that are all 20 minutes long, it's just a very high pressure situation to write like the 5 cues or the 3 cues you need for that fashion show. So that's the main difference between TV and a theater show, is that theater is supposed to be the same every day. Is it? Not completely, because
Yeah, what happened when it crashed?
so what happened when the Simpty crashed on Beetlejuice was, one, I have the ability to see that the actual time code itself was not running. The way that particular situation worked is that the orchestra pit feeds time code to other devices. So I knew that the time code for that event started at like the 12th hour, and then was running continuously. And it would run like 2 other cues for me, and it ran a bunch of media content. So I can see on the light board in a corner that the actual time code had stopped, that it wasn't actually counting forward. I advanced a little bit late, so we actually got behind a cue. We were in darkness for a few more seconds than we should have been on a normal, when everything works properly. But there's ways for me to see if that was broken or not. And also the music sounded really strange because there's live music in that show, and then the Simpty stuff runs a bunch of pre-recorded music off of keyboards and however else they do that in Musicland, which or you have someone you could talk to about that. But you know, if it usually had pre-recorded voices that went ooh ah, all I heard was so it is pretty obvious when it goes wrong. But for me,
for you, the audience probably had no idea, unless if they saw the show like 5,000 times.
If they saw the show before, they probably knew something was wrong. I mean, personally, if I was in the audience, obviously I work in the field, I think most normal people would have been like, something isn't quite right. But I mean, you know, maybe a lot of people didn't know that. I mean, we also work interdepartmentally to resolve situations like this, because other people that are trying to fix the actual problem, which was not my responsibility because I don't work in the orchestra pit, but someone from the sound department is going to run over to the conductor to try to switch them over to the backup. Because in those situations, you have a primary and a backup. Just the way
you need that, like the backup.
Primary light board and a backup light board.
So everything's.
I use the backup.
Everything's backed up. And what happens if the orchestra would the orchestra be able to play those pieces if they needed to?
So
is that like the backup?
So the orchestra still continued to play. I mean, it's there's humans involved in the music as well. So the conductor keeps conducting and the players keep playing. I think what happens on their end is that the click track portion for that probably went out, but the conductor is conducting to the click track.
So they're still doing what they need to do.
Speed, he's probably still conducting at the same speed, you know. But because we had musicians in 3 different rooms, a lot of people physically in front of the conductor. So obviously, click track is heavily relied upon.
Yeah, I know that. One of my great friends, Andrew Beal, who wrote Song of Solomon, composed Song of Solomon. You and him were working on Beetlejuice at the same time, and I told you to go to try to find out where he was, and he has his own separate. On Broadway, when the orchestra usually there are times where they put the percussionist in a totally different section.
Yeah, he literally has his own room,
which is a totally different room in a totally different place in the theater, because drums are loud, and somehow they're able to still get it to talking to the community here. Drums are loud. put the drums somewhere else, figure out. It's done. It's done on Broadway. Obviously, the technology and the things that they're doing there is probably the budget and the just the brain power over there is huge. But it was always so interesting to me that they do that. And you need
Broadway
to
shows
run
only
around
for
sometimes.
about 6 weeks, so they have
Right.
6 weeks to, EQ.
We have one day.
Right. So I mean,
Usually.
I lit a little show for a festival this past summer that I had like 3 hours to cue a show, and I had like 300 cues to write. But
Oh
I
my
also
God.
wrote a lot of them at home, and then like came in with a USB stick and was like, yoink.
Yeah.
Situation where the stakes are really high and a lot of money is involved, they do invest in a lot more time.
Yeah.
So a Broadway musical does spend about 6 weeks in tech, and that's in addition to loading in the show, which usually takes, I would say, about a month. I could find out for you, but
But you've done a lot of loading, right?
yeah, I work a lot for the Roundabout. So I do a lot of their turnovers. Our turnovers are very quick. It's kind of like being in college again, because we'll take out a show in 3 to 5 days, and then we'll put another show in about like a week. And it depends. It depends on if the previous show extended its run or not, when the next show is supposed to start previews. So at the time of the start of the coronavirus crisis, we were actually supposed to turn over a show at the Roundabout. We ended up taking a show out in 3 days, but it was supposed to be, I think, an 11-day changeover. So that's like 11 days between a show closing and another show starting previews. So they get, if you have focus on a Wednesday and a Thursday, they usually start dry tech on a Thursday night. Then you start having tech with actors a Friday, and then the show will open the next Thursday. So you have like a week of tech on the nonprofit level for something like Roundabout, Manhattan Theater Club, Second Stage. Those are much smaller shows than something like Beetlejuice, which is a huge, huge musical. And they're smaller. They're much smaller in scale to even like a play that would go in at a much smaller Broadway theater, like the Golden or the Booth, in which they primarily do limited run plays that are meant to only run 12 to 18 weeks. But those plays,
we wish we could have.
probably they tech for usually a couple weeks, if not longer, and that depends on who's involved and how much money is involved and egos. Because let's be honest, that's how it works.
Yeah, no, we wish here we could have that amount of tech time. It's we have to sometimes, because the theaters aren't available even
Well, I mean,
here. You can only have like one day. You can only have one day of tech, but a lot of it has to do with you have to pay per day that you're in the theater. It's crazy sometimes the tech here. I just want to say thank you, Aviva and Shlomit, Dale, for watching, and Maya Tenenbaum, who was in the Heights. Apparently, we're mutual friends. So she's kind of she grew up with you. Wow.
I know that. Yeah, we grew up together.
Oh, so cool. Like whoa.
Whoa,
Is this
we
from?
haven't seen each other in a bazillion years, except maybe.
Is this from Teaneck or you went to high school or you went to elementary school?
I think it's from Teaneck going to elementary school together, unless I'm mixing up my people in my life.
Cool. I mean, she definitely didn't go to Frisch, or I would know her.
Well,
By the way, we know each other. We went to Frisch together.
yeah, unless I'm mixing up the people I know. We grew up in the same
Summer
neighborhood.
camp.
Oh, summer
camp. Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. Summer camp. Okay. We have flies. Summer camp. So she played what's the name? In the Heights. Nina in the Heights. When Starcatcher did it here, when they only did, I believe they only did one day of tech, or maybe two, but that's basically what we have here.
It's funny, those like one-day tech experiences, those are like one of the best ways to learn. I mean, I've done a lot of festivals here in New York as a lighting designer where you get 3 hours to tech something maybe a day. And I've done a lot of like Guerrilla Downtown Theater, where maybe we get a few days to tech something, but I also had to hang all the lights myself. So I spent 3 days hanging lights by myself and then had like 2 days to write all the cues by myself and then rehang the lights because of course I did something wrong and had to like rehang.
So Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, by the way, guys, they're having outdoor rehearsal. Before this, Yisrael did a VI Sing, and then before that, he did Rewrite the World, and I did the lighting for that. And I was so blessed to work with Rabbi Dr. Krug. He came in, and we were putting up all the lights and taking them down together. We got a shawarma together at like 12 o'clock at night or something afterwards. So Sam,
Rabbi Dr. Krug did not get any shawarma with me in high school or you. I'm very jealous.
I don't know if they were around the corner in Frisch. So Maya says Maya, you were a counselor, an adult. Maya says Lumo.
Yeah,
Lumo.
Lumo is canceled this summer for the first time ever. It is so sad. You know Lumo. I'm going to call it the Summer Musical Theater Workshop is probably what I used to call it, CB, because I've been doing that since I was in like second grade as a camper. And then when we were in high school, I like morphed into being a lighting designer because I got too old to be a camper. I have lit that camp for like, oh my gosh, I don't know, like 15 years. I took one summer off. I took the previous summer off because I did a job for more money. But I was going to go back this summer and do it again. But it got canceled because of
unfortunately that's happening to a lot of summer camps. So that's you were in charge of the light. You were the stage manager. So that's where she knows you from.
Yes. So if we Summer Musical Theater Workshop, we technically never had a stage manager. So I would call all the light cues for the whole show.
She was there for 9 years. Wow.
Yeah. I've been involved total in Summer Musical Theater Workshop for probably over 20 years, for like most of my life. My dad also is one of the musical directors and composers at that camp. Because that camp is a very special experience where based on a theme every year, they compose mini original musicals based on a theme. So the littlest kids do like a 10-minute musical and the oldest kids do a 30-minute musical. And then there's this giant opening and giant closing number that all 100 plus kids from the whole camp are a part of. It's a very unique experience. I have never heard of another musical theater camp that is really exactly the same as the one at Lucy Moses.
Well, I was just talking to Luna. It's so funny that because I was just literally talking to Luna today, the interview I had this afternoon, and we were talking about kids and bringing them into theater, and they created original works during the summer. And there's actually a program here in Jerusalem called Jelly. I don't know if it's canceled or not for the summer. I'm not sure, but Ailey, who said hi before. He runs that program. So there are things happening in the world for kids to be involved in summer camp, and they're really, really special. And Sam, you've been there for that long. You were a kid, and now look what you're doing. So that's amazing. I just want to ask a question, Sam. How many shows have you worked on? Favorite, and why is it your favorite? This is from Dale.
Ooh, that is a really tough question.
You've mentioned beforehand that you do different types of shows. So if Dale, you're still watching, do you have a specific, are you talking about 30-minute shows?
Well, let's see. So I've done a show which actually got remounted once. It's called Lemon Meringue. It's a very emotional piece. It's a play that also had movement and song in it, but I wouldn't call it a musical. And it was actually, it was written by a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, which is obviously a very serious topic. But the piece itself was very healing for him to write, even though it might not be the best piece of theater, right, that I've ever done, but to be involved in something that the writer was so emotionally connected to, that really came from the heart. It was one of the most, fulfilling experiences as a designer to try to bring someone who isn't actually, a theater composer or writer or author work to life. And and it's actually one of the times where I got to the opening of a project and I felt so emotionally invested, and I was so happy that we got through the experience, because it was a very unique experience. I actually like cried at the opening. And it was one of the times that one of the messages I got from one of my college professors, my costume design professor, Deborah Oddie, where she said, you should always design from your heart, and you should only take projects because you want to do them. And obviously, I think we all know that's not always quite possible. Sometimes you need to take a job because you need to make money, or you need to take a job because you need to have the opportunity to get a better opportunity, even if it's not your favorite play. But that was probably one of the times where I've really felt very connected to it. And then actually, I lit a musical this past summer called Ladyship, and it was part of the New York Musical Theater Festival. And I read the play the whole musical, and listened to the music before I accepted the assignment. And then obviously the producers had to accept that they wanted me over another lighting designer. But I read it, and it was very, even though it takes place in the 16 or 1700s, it was very politically current, both because of the Me Too movement that went on recently. But I felt very connected to it, that it was something I really wanted to be involved in. And even though we got like 3 hours of tech, everyone that was involved was incredibly creative and collaborative. And it was a very fulfilling experience.
I think we're going to see a lot of those types of shows when all of this. I mean, I've been seeing some stuff that people are creating when I was with the Theater Maker Studio with Ken Davenport, and in general, like I watched the Theater of War, and there's a lot of people that are now writing current things, or developing right now, because they can't put it on stage, but they're developing it. I think we're going to see a lot of that. How did you handle it were you ever Dale? Thank you for the questions. You're awesome. I love that you're being engaging. I love for more people to engage. He asked, have you ever been miserable during a show, and how did you handle it? I could tell you, Dale, there have been shows which I've been miserable in, and how I handled it. Sometimes well, sometimes not. But we'll see what Sam says.
To be totally honest, there was one really terrible experience I had that I definitely didn't handle well. I'll just be totally honest. I lit a small show once in Maplewood, New Jersey, for a theater group that I blocked out the name. We were doing a pre-written play, right? It wasn't like a new original work. They obviously the pay was not that great. And I was using a light board that I very much disliked, and it actually kept crashing on me because I was trying to push it far past what it was really capable of. It was something it's a light board that's meant to really be used manually, but I was trying to very quickly record a lot of complicated cues to be played back. And the light board literally crashed on me every 5 minutes. And I think because another lighting designer had not really been this ambitious, the producer and the director, who was the same person, was incredibly frustrated with me. And it was one of the only times where I've gotten into like a screaming match with someone at tech and actually walked out of a theater and like just cried. That said, I definitely didn't handle that situation very well. But I definitely took it as a learning experience of trusting your instincts on when maybe you don't want to take a job. Because when that opportunity had come my way, although I was recommended highly by somebody else that I had had a really good experience with, when I met the producers and the director, I just had a really bad feeling. And I should have trusted that instinct. I had another experience with a theater company I worked with in Manhattan. I had lit a play for them about Marie Curie 1 year, of which was a wonderful experience, and the production really looked very lovely. And not that the play we did the next year, which was called Something in Africa, it's not that play looked bad. It was another time where I just didn't jive with the director. And when I interviewed with her, because I was required to interview, I just knew in my gut that like she didn't like me. We didn't get along. And I wrote to the producer and I was like, I know you want to hire me because I've worked for you before and you know that I can work with your budget and in this theater and, you know, for the very little pay, but I just know this woman doesn't like me. It's not going to work out. Please find somebody else. And ironically, she was like, no, I convinced her why you're good for her. It's going to be great. And then it was another really like frustrating experience.
Yeah.
That I was very unhappy. I handled it a lot better than the other thing I just described, where I just kind of barreled through. I also got really sick with a stomach virus during tech, and I had to like hang the whole show myself, of course, because there was no supporting staff. So, you know, of course, I was like sick and miserable on trying to cue a show with someone I wasn't getting along with. But at the end of the day, the show looked fine. And at the end of the day, we were all pretty happy with the show. There were some things that didn't go well with that. Where I had an availability issue, and part of that was they didn't pay very much, and I had an overlapping project. So it was like, well, after this day, you know, there's no more changes, and the director really didn't like that. But when you're paying someone less than $200 to design a show, you can't necessarily expect an 80-hour work week from them when they have competitive paying projects and we need to pay our bills. You know,
Right.
now because I make money at a higher scale doing primarily technical lighting work and programming the light boards for other designers, because I am able to afford myself a higher quality of life through some of those jobs, I can take a project like Ladyship that project for the festival didn't pay a lot. It paid actually more than some of these other projects, but I was able to take that project and not be relying on it as my sole source of income at that point in time. So I was able to not be distracted by you know, not having any money. I think for especially those of us like you in Jerusalem is a very expensive city as well, because it's in the Merkaz of Israel. You know, New York is, as everyone knows, also a very expensive town. You know, I encourage other artists that are on a journey, follow your dreams, but always make sure that you're doing something that can pay your bills. I've been really lucky. I know this wasn't a question, but I've never had a day job. I've never really done work outside of my related fields. I've just kind of like struggled and struggled and struggled and worked and worked and worked. And as you know, all hours most of the year. But you know, making sure that you can separate from yourself from like the financial struggle, I think later has helped me avoid some of those difficult situations because I'm not distracted by, you know, not being able to pay my bills.
Yeah, get to enjoy your other hobby, which is figure skating as well.
I have not been doing anything lately. I mean, all the rinks are.
I mean,
no one can go ice skating.
no, but I mean, like you've been able to make that part of your life as well. While you were pursuing lighting, you also were traveling. You traveled to what was it, to judge even? You were judging.
I volunteered as a figure skating official, and something that I think everyone would find very interesting is that on my journey, volunteering my time, becoming a figure skating judge, it actually helped me become a better lighting artist, because judges in figure skating have to evaluate a lot of technical stuff, but we also have to evaluate the choreography and the emotions of the skater, and if they're connected to the music or not, and if they're skating to the music or not, and the composition of the choreography. So obviously all that stuff is in some ways inherently subjective, even though it's supposed to be judged in an objective way. But because of the language of having to discuss figure skating programs with other judges, or in a judging school format, trying to get my judging appointments, it actually has helped me become a better lighting designer, because I've been able to use some of that language and apply it as a designer. And also it's taken me away from work and made me not think about lighting. So, you know, I think when you're only doing one thing, you know, you can't be one-dimensional. And that's something I think is important to all theater artists and anyone that's pursuing degrees in theater. You know, a lot of theater programs are a conservatory style program where they don't want you to do anything outside of what you're doing for your degree. And although there are positives to that, because you're like fully immersed in theater and you're going to be a theater artist, I think that it breeds a certain level of one-dimensionality. And people need to experience life, and you need to go out there and do different things and meet different people. And I know sometimes, especially, Jerusalem has a very large religious, observantly religious community, but not necessarily a horse-blinded religious community like the ultra-Orthodox sects of Judaism. But I think that, experiencing other communities as you see fit within your own life is really helpful to gaining like breadth of becoming a better artist, because you're going to need to play something as an actor. You're going to have to play a person you've never been before, and you're going to need to be able to draw that off of something. So
I love I love how you take you said figure skating, and it has taught you things for lighting design, and I think that's an amazing message. Really, that you can. I mean, I was talking to an actor today, Josh Becker, and he said, "Oh, you studied acting?" And I said, "Yeah," and I'm like, "But I also have a degree in counterterrorism and conflict resolution." Totally different things, but I try to, from my understanding of conflict resolution, what I learned in college, I try to implement that in my in how I go about it as an artist. So and for a lighting designer as well, you can do that, and you can take really pieces from all parts of your life to really influence it and teach you about everything else. And that's amazing. And I feel like today we even have more of an opportunity to do that because we get to have all this reflection when we're home. By the way, you guys are still on lockdown?
yes.
In a way. I mean, you're in a way, but you're still.
I mean, I have not really gone anywhere outside of going to Good Morning America, being home, and like going to the supermarket. I try not to go to a big supermarket. I actually go to Shoshi's Hamakolet because it's smaller, and I only go in if no one else is like in there.
Wait, there's an is it Israeli Shoshi's Hamakola?
It's the best. It's why I moved here, because I'm around the corner from this like little Israeli market. If I could didn't
Cool.
yet, I just
Well,
made ollie uptown to Riverdale.
well, well, Sam's in Riverdale, but he has been thinking about joining us here in Israel, and we would love to have you. You're an amazing artist, a great friend, and I'm just looking at the Dale keeps on shooting things out here, like different questions. So,
That's so kind of you. When the
but
right time, I will come, and it just hasn't. As you
exactly
privately, the right time is not now, so I'm not there
right.
yet.
Right. But I'm so glad that you're still working and you're able to find jobs during this time. I know a lot of artists.
Really lucky. I have one of the only jobs in town, and it's a substitute. It's not. I'm not. It's like 1 or 2
Yeah.
days a week, maybe.
Yeah.
So.
But it's something, and some people really are not able to. So I mean, we're starting to ease restrictions here, and people are starting to go back to work and whatnot. But we have no idea how that's going to turn out. So there's still a lot of people that are taking their time, being cautious. Bang Bang is rehearsing in the fields with masks on. It's so that I guess they're getting their dance moves. So Sam, on that note, I'm just gonna introduce the rest of the week, and then we'll say goodbye. On that note, which so tomorrow we have Michael Aiden joining us at 2 p.m. He was in Cinderella, West Side Story at Beit Hillel. Then we have Michael Burrell of Beit Hillel, the artistic director, producer, all around awesome guy. Will join us tomorrow evening. Dale, who asked all these amazing questions today, will be joining us on Wednesday evening. Sam, if you're on Facebook, you could start shooting questions to Dale. I'm sure he would love that. And then Gabby, it's Yeah. Um, and then we have Gabby Shine on Thursday at 8 p.m. And next week we have another guest from New York. We have Rachel Dean, Sunday evening, who I believe you met. We
Very
did
possible. You know, I'm terrible with names.
right,
So.
but we did the shakshuka party
Oh,
thing.
yes. Shakshuka party.
I think you're in the same that breakfast. I think you were. I think so.
I hope this pandemic ends so we can all have shakshuka parties.
Those are amazing. Dina makes an awesome shakshuka, and she taught you.
Yummy. I
Also,
theoretically make amazing shakshuka as well.
I'm sure you showed me pictures, and it looks amazing. And then we have J Town Playhouse is joining us next Thursday. Jen Fleischer and Eliza Shopman Land. I'm missing someone else. I can't remember now. And then the Sunday afterwards, we have Mayan Allen, who's going to talk about choreography and whatnot with me, and the Next Normal reunion, the Jerusalem Next Normal reunion. So thank you so much again, Sam. This was great, and we will see you tomorrow again on Jet Live. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
And let me see where my mouse is. I lost my mouse. There's my mouse. All right. Bye bye.